Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Steve Jobs, but made in China. Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Bad Black News Brunch Podcast, digesting crappy news with crepes and fruit. Welcome, everyone, to the Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers, writers, actors. We bring all kinds of behind-the-scenes knowledge and try to use that to grow our own knowledge base by dissecting films and seeing what we see. It's interesting, you know, being an artist. It's always a one step away from failure and fraud, so to speak. That's how you feel so often, you know, calling yourself an artist or pursuing this thing. You just feel fake, that I'm not really what I'm saying I am, but you are. Like, you don't have to be a millionaire in order to say, you know, you're a singer. All you have to do is, do you sing? Have you ever been paid for singer? Now you're a professional singer. I remember the first time I heard that lesson, a buddy of mine was a singer, and he loved singing, and we grew up and he was just singing all the time. And he got paid like $100 to go sing on a track for a producer friend of mine, Big Rich, shout out Oreo. And he was saying, yeah, I'm not a professional. He's like, you know, here's your $100. Have you ever been paid to sing? He's like, well, yeah. Well, then you're a professional. Go do it, you know? And I just love that attitude. It's like, you don't need the big mansion to say you're a professional at whatever it is you're doing. You just need to, one, be doing it, you know? And if you've gotten paid, that certainly qualifies. And even if you haven't gotten paid, doesn't mean you're not what you say you are. It's all about your attitude and, you know, do you want to do this? Well, then congratulations, you are. You're not a fake. How do you feel about the title artist and just, I don't know, owning it?
It is forever going to be, if you're an artist, you're forever going to feel the imposter syndrome. I mean, I think maybe even more so the more successful you are. You know, maybe when you get to a certain level, then you're like, okay, I'm pretty good, you know? But I think a lot of people feel that way. I know I do, but then I try to remind myself of like what art actually is. And if you really, you know, look at art or what it is, no matter what medium, then I think you can kind of get past the imposter syndrome, and you know, remind yourself what the word professional actually means, right? So like, you know, you can be professional without being a professional. You know, it's an act and it's a title. So if you're not paid yet, act like you're getting paid, right? Just act like it, because eventually it will come. You know, if you don't stop, if you don't quit, eventually it will come. And the same goes for, you know, the feeling of imposter syndrome. I mean, I've been making music almost my entire life, and I still feel like anytime, you know, I would play in front of someone, or I would let somebody hear a song for the first time, I would make all of these excuses as to why it's not, you know, as good as Taylor Swift's new record or, you know, whatever. Insert other artist name here. And then I stopped doing that because 9 times out of 10, and 9.99 times out of 10, the person listening doesn't hear what you're hearing. They're hearing that for the first time. And so, or see what you're seeing. You know, you're seeing it from the point of view of I birthed this. There was nothing, and then there is something. And so you see all of the things that you want to be perfect or better or more accurately displaying what you know, wanted it to be when you started. But they're not seeing that. They're wondering, how does this make me feel? First time you watch a film, you get a feeling. You're not looking necessarily at the cinematography. You're not looking at the, you know, saying, oh, you know, why did he tilt his head like that? You're just absorbing, right, at first. In fact, so to uproot your audience's ability to discover their own feelings by inserting yours subverts that. And so I would just say, like I said before, if you're not a paid professional, act like it, meaning do not make any excuses for your art. If you're at a place where you're willing to let someone hear the song or see the film or whatever, then it is 90% there, right? It's just that added 10% that's bugging you, that will always bug you if you don't have. But it's okay, because you're at a place where you should be okay with letting it out there and letting your audience feel what they need to feel, or what they're going to feel. And then you can take in feedback and you can make changes if you want or not, right? And then move forward. And the other thing is just never stop creating, because, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, you at some point you have to say, this is done, or I'm done with this. I've taken this as far as I can take it or want to take it. But that doesn't mean that you're done creating. You move on to the next thing, and you take what you learned in the thing that you made and you turn it into something else. And that might feel daunting. It might feel like, oh, maybe I wasted my time making that thing before because I put all my eggs in that basket. But no, you didn't. It's the same thing. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so when you finish a thing, when you finish a mile 15, you go to mile 16. You don't stop. You know what I mean? You you slow down, you get some water, and then you keep going and you make the next thing. You run the next mile. And that it's that journey, right? It's that journey of, do you love that journey? That's one of the reasons why Kobe Bryant was the greatest of all time. It's like, he loved the process. He loved the waking up at 3:00 in the morning and going to work out before everybody else. And so he's doing his second workout by the time they're doing their first, he loved that. And so that's what made him great. It wasn't because he just practiced. It's not because he practiced. It's because he loved practicing. So you got to just love practicing. So anyway, I could go on a tirade about this forever. I love talking about that stuff.
I love that. I mean, one thing, I want to even double down on that you were talking about comparing yourself, whatever, to Taylor Swift or whoever you're studying or admiring or, digesting lately. I love, because it's easy to look at someone and take inspiration. And I think we should be doing that. And even if you don't want to be doing that, you can't help it, because we're human beings, we're social creatures. We just absorb the things that we're putting in front of ourselves, right? And so you can't really prevent that to a large extent. But what I love, though, is you have to do that and throw it away at the same time. Be able to look at what someone's doing and say, oh man, I see what they're doing that I'm not, but that's not a bad thing.
Yes.
This is what makes my stuff my stuff. And it's so easy to just want to emulate and work out your own kinks through someone else's, aesthetic or whatever it is that they got going on. I love Antoine Fuqua. He is just an incredible filmmaker that is his own person. I think for him, it would have been easy to look at John Singleton or the Hughes brothers or Gina Prince Bythewood. Like, it would have been easy to look at all his contemporaries and say, oh, here's what they're doing with their career. And what am I doing with mine? Instead, I feel like he's looking at, Ridley Scott and everyone and just saying, what do I want to do? I don't care, what people think I should be doing. I'm going to make Training Day, and you know what? Then I'm going to go make King Arthur. And you're a black young director. Like, what are you doing making a fantasy medieval film? He's like, man, this is just what I enjoy. I like this story. I like these characters, and I don't care if it's a bunch of white bread. Like, I just want to make this story. And that's good enough for me. And it should be good enough for you. I love his career. I love everything he's been doing, because it's all too easy to get sucked up into saying, okay, this is what I think other people are doing, and here's how I fit into that. It doesn't matter. Make your stuff your stuff. This is what you are. And the more that, fine, study and learn, but embrace the things that you like And that's ultimately going to be more defining of your career instead of, oh, you fit in with everyone. Why are you trying to fit in with everyone? What makes that special? Nothing. Make it you. And I still love that thing you said, I don't know, 20 episodes ago about, if you ever feel like something is missing something, make it more you. Don't try to figure out what's wrong. Just make it more specifically you. And that's how you stand apart. You don't stand apart by seeing how can I look more quote unquote professional? It's like, that doesn't matter. Billie Eilish, go record in your closet. Who cares? This is what's going to make you stand out, is loving what you do. And that's been something I'll certainly talk about at the end of this episode when we get into our recos. But over the last few months, I've been wrestling with this thought of, here's what everyone else is doing, and my stuff doesn't look like theirs. And I like that a lot. And I don't know if I'm just dumb or if it's just, this is me rebelling. I feel like we need a new French New Wave mumblecore movement, because everyone is just doing the same bullshit. And it's so exhausting to me to watch. And I think we haven't learned our lesson yet, but I'll dive into that later. With that, what are we diving into today?
Yeah, I'm glad you will, because I've got more to say about that too. Today we are diving into Training Day. When did this come out?
2001.
2001. Yeah. Training Day, which is streaming on HBO. So if you haven't seen that film, please go watch it, because we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff.
For sure. We'll look at a few things at least. I'll touch on some of the cinematography, the horizon line. We'll look at some of the story and writing. I like the story beats in this. So just from an outline perspective, I think this is a really easy film to look at and see how they got to where they are. So we'll look at all that and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. A rookie cop spends his first day as a Los Angeles narcotics officer with a rogue detective who isn't what he appears to be. Directed by Antoine Fuqua. Written by David Ayer. Cinematography by Mauro Fiore. Featuring Denzel Washington as Alonzo, Ethan Hawke as Jake, Scott Glenn as Roger, Eva Mendes as Sara, and Cliff Curtis as Smiley.
Justifiable homicide in the line of duty, okay? Now what happened was...
What happened was murder. And armed robbery. Oh, wait, we had badges, so it's different?
Oh, son, can't open your eyes. Can't you see? Huh?
That man was your friend, and you killed him like a fly.
Come on, my friend, huh?
Yeah.
Tell me why. Because he knows my first name? Son, this is the game. I'm playing his ass. That's my job. That's your job. Roger sold dope to kids. The world is a better place without him. Hey, this man was the biggest major violator in Los Angeles. I watched that cocksucker operate with impunity for over 10 years, and now I got it. The shit's chess, it ain't checkers. What you think we're gonna do? We're gonna roll up in the black and white, huh? Slap the cuffs on him, you're under arrest. That's a high roller, dog. Take the money.
I mean, I already told you I'm not gonna take that. I'm not gonna take that.
Okay, don't just burn it, barbecue it, fish fry it. I don't give a fuck, but the boys will feel better.
But fuck their feelings.
Jake, you're not making them feel like you're part of the team.
The team? You guys are fucking insane. All right, I'll go back to the valley. I'll cut parking tickets, you know? It can't be like this.
It is this way, man. I'm sorry I exposed you to it, but it is. It's ugly, but it's necessary.
I became a cop to put away drug dealers, the poisoners, the criminals, not to be one.
You sound just like me. And I know what you're going through. I know what you're feeling. You're scared.
I'm not scared.
Yes, you are. You're terrified. Everybody goes through that the first time. I went through it. The sooner you can match what's in your head with what's going on in the real world, the better you're gonna feel. In this business, you gotta have a little dirt on you for anybody to trust you. And when all this is behind you, there's gonna be a whole other world that opens up for you. I walk a higher path, son. I can give you the keys to all the doors.
What are you talking about?
My guys are pretty good, but they're not leaders. They're clowns. You're a leader. You want my job? You got it. You want to lock up poisoners? This is the best place to do it. But you gotta just, take your time. You make detective. You play the game. You grow wise. And then you can change things. But you gotta change them from the inside, son. Let's go downtown to the station. You talk to my guy, Stan. And he'll walk you through what you gotta say to the DA guys, okay?
I love watching Ethan Hawke's heart break right there as he's getting the rundown. It's so cool. You don't really get to see a lot of heartbreaks that aren't romantic, and to watch this guy's dreams and sense of reality, sense of self start to just erode right there as he's getting the rundown. He's like, because I think up until that scene, it felt like the first time watching this, you don't know if there's a big twist of this is all an act, this is all a game as a part of your training, because so many movies up around this era were all about that, right? Like the big third act reveal of everything you saw was a ruse, and here we're finding out like no, this is it, this is a game, and it's the reality's kind of crumbling around him, and I love watching that. But this thing is 21 years old. It's old enough to drink. It could take us out and buy a round. Does it hold up?
Oh my God. Absolutely. I could watch this movie back to back. I could restarted it right when it ended. And okay. This, I feel like movies in general, there's so many things that can take you out of it, right? There's so many things where you're like, oh, I see that. I see that. I see that. And you're not even you're not even looking, but it just like jumps out at you, right? Maybe it's like a really weird edit, just for the sake of being artsy, or that wasn't a good idea. Or maybe it's a line that's delivered kind of like lackadaisically, or maybe it's some lighting or something. But there is nothing in this film that takes you out of it. Every single word, every delivery, every camera movement, every single, all the sounds, just everything just immerses you in it. Like and that scene is a great example, because up until that point, there was no whispering. There wasn't. That was like the quietest moment of the entire film. What you just showed. Everything else was like, screeching tires and yelling and guns, being drawn and over the top music because he's high and just crazy stuff. It all just happened, like very loudly, and that moment was really the deciding moment of the film, which was what is this film going to end up being, right? And so it could have turned into something where there's an explanation, for what's happening, and maybe it turns into like, no, this is really training and whatever. You have no idea what's going to happen, and so Denzel is not just talking to Ethan; he's talking to us. He's convincing us. So I imagine, because Antoine wrote this, right?
David Ayer. Yeah.
David Ayer wrote this, right? Okay. I imagine him sitting down and thinking, okay, how do I convince the audience? How does Denzel convince the audience that, or his character convince the audience to go along with this? He's not trying to convince Ethan's character, Jake. He's trying to convince us. Because up until now, we've been like, because look, it's Denzel Washington. You want to love him. You want to be with him. And he's taking us for a ride. Ethan is just the conduit, right? He's taking us for a ride. We're in the passenger seat. And then up until him shooting that guy, we're still with him. And then he shoots that guy and you're like, no, come on, Ethan. And so when Ethan takes the shotgun from him and in the house and aims it at him, he's like, you've pointed a gun at me twice now. You will not point We'll not do it a third time. You're like, fuck yeah. You got it, Ethan. Good job. And so you're behind Ethan and you're with Ethan then. So all of a sudden there's this shift of I'm with Denzel's character. Now I'm with Ethan's character. I'm with Jake as a viewer. And so that moment has to get quiet because we haven't been quiet the entire movie. So they say if you're like an elementary school teacher or just a teacher in general, the best way to get people to listen to you is to whisper, because then they have to be quiet to hear you. And so that's exactly what they do here. They bring everything down, and the way that Denzel speaks, he's so poignant. His T's, his P's, that you cannot help but latch onto them because, of course, they're delivered effortlessly and perfectly. But the way that he speaks is so poignant that you just want to believe what he's saying. And so, and all he doesn't need to get us to the station. He just needs to get us to the next stop, right? He needs Ethan to stay in the car. He needs us to stay in the car with him. It's just such a great scene that defines the entire movie for me. So it's a great choice. Film is excellent. I mean, it is a masterclass in acting and writing and storytelling, bro. This is all one day and it feels like a month. You're like, oh my God, this is the longest day I can't imagine being Jake. And then I feel like the ending is very important. I read that the ending was going to be something else, and Denzel actually made the suggestion no, the ending needs to be violent. It was just going to be very, like Jake puts the money on the bed or something, and he walks out, something like that. And Denzel said, no, this needs to be more aggressive and violent. And so he made that suggestion. So anyway, I absolutely loved it, enjoyed it, and could watch it again tomorrow. It's one of my favorite Ethan Hawke films because I feel like it asked a lot of him. And that scene is a great example of, you said it, the heartbreak of him realizing, oh shit, like my whole life has been a facade, is just led to this thing that I did not know was as broken as it is. And now I've just learned it. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, same. Obviously, it holds up because of all the reasons you're talking about. The performances, God, Ethan and Denzel together. I don't know if they've done anything else together, but that's an easy buy. If that's on the table, they're just so good playing off each other, and Ethan has this great doe-eyed look to him, and it's so fun to see Denzel play kind of against his type, which is he's always a leading man in a positive role, and getting to see him be more complicated. It's a little easy to say that, oh, he's just a bad guy, but he's not just a bad guy. He is a guy who turned bad, and we get to see little reflections of that through Ethan Hawke's performance, because Jake is this guy that he used to be, and now he's kind of being confronted with his own ideals. And as much as he's trying to convince Jake, and as you said, as much as he's trying to convince the audience, he's also sitting there convincing himself that what he's doing is the way it's done. And that's the line that he was fed. Now he's feeding it to someone else. Like, there's just a world of nuance that is in the writing, it's in the directing, and it sure as hell is in the performances. And I love, Denzel, anything he does, he's just, for me, my favorite actor because he's so gripping to watch. He's so compelling. Like any scene he's in, you just can't help but just lean in and say, what's he going to say? What's he going to do? Even if he's not talking, right? You just lean in and watch what he's doing. And he's someone I could spend, years studying, and to some extent I have. And you just can't replicate it. You have to appreciate that's just innate in him. But it's not like, it's not just him. It is performance. It is acting. It is skill and technique. You can't just say, oh, it's just Denzel being Denzel. And that's probably like 60% true, but the other 40%, that's talent. That's him working on his craft and understanding when the camera's on you, when I have a line, how do I milk this line? And I brought this up to an acting teacher when I was new in acting still. And I was like, man, what is Denzel doing? Like, I watch him and I don't understand it. And this was 15 years ago, and he's gone on to do like Macbeth, and he's just amazing. And my teacher was like, yeah, hey, I get it. Like, you see him and he's just chewing on every line, and he does it in a way that doesn't feel like he's just chewing up screen time. And that was all he could give me. It was like, I don't know, man. And just hearing my teacher though say chewing on it, and I was like, that's interesting.
That's a good way,
right?
Yeah.
And watching him, it's like a word isn't just a word; it's an idea. And sometimes, this is a classic. If you're an actor, erase all your punctuation. Like, as a writer, when I'm writing my scenes, I'm trying to get away from this, but I'm pretty beholden to English syntax. And so sometimes I might put a comma that doesn't mean pause. And as an actor, you can't know if the script is telling you a pause or not. You just have to memorize words and let words be words. And the intention comes through the scene. Sometimes.
Man, can I interrupt you? Because that is I'm so glad you said that. That is, and I'm so glad that you do that. That is great, because you're right. That does tell an actor there's a comma, there's a pause, or there's a change of some kind, whether it's a pause or not, definitely with a period. And that doesn't necessarily have to be that way when you're saying the lines or whatever. I mean, even these scripts that we do, that we're doing voiceover or something, you got to kind of ignore that kind of stuff. So that's interesting that when you're writing, you're trying to like get that out of your writing now. That I've never seen a script like that. That would be great to read.
Yeah, I really try. And sometimes I just can't help myself. And I put a comma after someone's name, right?
Yeah, right.
But I do try now to be more intentional about creating rhythm and pace. And I've always had some of that in there. But I will say I just haven't been very consistent about when or why I do some of those things all the time, unless I know this character has a very specific heavy speech pattern that I want to make sure reads on the page. And ideally, what you write has a rhythm to it instinctually. And I think a lot of my writing has always been that. But even with that, sometimes I just can't help it. Like, the sentence ended here, here's a period. But I try to have lots of run-on sentences. But regardless, you have to ignore that no matter what. If the writer did or didn't have an intention, doesn't matter as an actor. You have to throw it all away, because at the end of the day, you're going to be on scene, on set, performing a scene with someone else. Most acting is with other people in the room that you're acting against. And you have to just be present and say, my intention comes through the context of the scene itself, paired with whatever my actors around me are doing. Sometimes you'll overlap each other. Sometimes you'll need to interrupt someone. That means sometimes their line might, have 5 words, but the intention of the scene is that there's a lot of conflict, and that maybe they only get 2 words out, because what your character has to say cannot wait. And now you have to play into that. And there's so much context that, it's hard to convey, because maybe the director that you're working with wants very clean dialogue. Maybe he doesn't want you making those decisions. Maybe he wants the editor to make those decisions. And so maybe contextually, like, the director isn't about that. He's not about that life. I am. I like messiness. I like people talking over each other. I'm a good editor. I'll figure it out. Don't you worry about that. I have the chops for that. And I'll figure it out, because the truth is, if it's playing naturally, I'm not going to want to cut away anyway.
Yeah.
If you're all doing your job, I will just enjoy this moment, this shot with what's going on, and I'll find a beat. My last film, like, I'm intercutting, certain shots, and I have lines running in ways that you wouldn't see in the edit, but behind the scenes, I'm like, oh man, that's a beautiful edit, because people have no idea these are 2 entirely different takes that I'm splicing together. because you know what? I'm a good effing editor. I will figure out that. Now, maybe I'm not a great sound mixer, but I can edit the F out of sound, and I will challenge anybody to beat me on sound editing. But yeah, with leveling and mixing, mastering, yeah, I'm dog poop. That's okay. I know my strengths. But you know, as an actor, you really have to throw away what's on the page to a large extent in order to play the moment. And I think Denzel is just a masterful actor because he knows exactly that. Like if you watch some shots and some moments, he's adding lines. It might say, there's a shot in here that I always think about. It's where Denzel just says good. And that's the whole line. And I bet on the page, it just says good. And for Denzel, it was like, good. And he's chewing on it for a minute. He's thinking, good, cut. Like the two things are happening there. One, Denzel isn't done with that scene. The other thing is the director is letting him have that space. He's letting him, he didn't, cut. He's like, okay, we got our line. We got our dialogue, cut. No. If you're a good director, you know to let your actors have a moment. They'll put the button on it. Let the actor put the button on it. And if he doesn't, you can still cut. There's nothing preventing you from cutting earlier, but just see what else is there. And this is why I get so direct about telling my actors, if you don't hear me say cut, you are not done. I yell cut. You don't. Don't ever cut yourself. And I get really frustrated when I see an actor break character because they thought, oh, someone did something wrong. And therefore we need to do another take. No, if someone screws up, that's an opportunity. That's not wrecking the scene. That's a chance for you to show me that you're still in the moment. You're still in the scene. You're still playing the characters. And I'm not done yet. Okay, they botched the line. How can I save them without breaking character? If the only way for you to save your fellow scene member is to break character, well, you're not doing your job. Your job sometimes is to be a writer right there in the moment. And I guarantee there's moments in this that are not scripted that are happening because two actors are in the room together and they're professionals and they refuse to break character. They're going to stay in it. It doesn't matter if someone said or did something dumb, and your instinct is to laugh as a human being. If it's not funny to your character should not be laughing. Like, yeah, I guarantee.
It's funny you say. It's funny you say that because I did hear that it was hard to get them to stop being in character, so they would yell cut and they would just keep going, and so and then to get rolling again, he would miss stuff. They would keep going and he would go cut. They would keep going and it'd be gold. And he'd be like, oh crap. Roll again. And by the time they're rolling again, he missed a bunch of stuff. But then, so it was hard to get them to stop being in character. Wow. So they ad-libbed a lot,
Wow. I didn't know that. Yeah. That's really cool.
And the whole King Kong ain't got shit on me. That was all Denzel.
That had to be, right?
It was.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's so dope. Like, yeah, this movie really is just a masterclass in writing, directing, performance, editing, sound editing. Like that. There's a scene after what was it? After the car ride, they're in the car. He says, "Pull over on the highway," and oh no, it's coming back from the wise men. They're leaving the three wise men lunch and. They're having this conversation in the car, and I'm like, this is all like ADR, but you wouldn't know it. It's so well done. That's some of the best ADR I've seen, and I'm not even 100% sure it is ADR, but just judging on the location, I'm like, there's no way they captured audio that clean. Maybe they did. Maybe they're just that good. But I'm like, and Ethan Hawke is over here kind of ad-libbing while Denzel is on the phone. He's like, man, somebody, I don't know. Like, it's just not good business. Like, he's just kind of talking to himself. And you got to get in the booth and get back in that headspace and like nail these little ad-libs in an ADR. Yeah. That's got to be just brutal. But it's perfect. It all coalesces amazingly well. The other thing before I even get into notes, I guess that strikes me is Denzel won an Oscar. He won Best Actor for this. And this was a great year because I think this is the same year, I'm pretty sure, that Halle Berry won Best Actress. And they were, I think that was the best Black actress award, ever given, in terms of we'd never seen another Black woman get Best Actress for an Oscar. I think Sidney Poitier had gotten a Best Actor, for In the Heat of the Night back in '67, I think. And so this wasn't, I think this might've been like the second Best Actor that's gone to, Black man. And a lot of people were, and this is one of those things where, sometimes you got to voice your concerns, and I get it, but people were kind of deriding it just because, Denzel had to play a crooked cop, evil, character in order to get it, instead of for Malcolm X that he should have got in whatever, 93, 94. And yes, you're right. He probably should have got I don't know who won, so I don't want to completely say he should have won, but definitely deserved the nomination for Malcolm X. Probably should have got it because he was absolutely amazing. Yet it's okay for him he earned this one too. Like, this wasn't an achievement award that you've seen some other actors get, where it's just like, oh, he's been doing it for a lifetime, let's just finally give him one. And the movie is almost, doesn't matter. He earned it for this for sure. And it's to say otherwise completely, removes his talent that he brings to this film. He deserves it because he was playing against character. Like, Denzel had been, to a certain point, starting to play Denzel. And to see him completely take on a completely new type of character and bring so much nuance and subtlety and strength to it, like, he just killed it. And the other question that you would have to start to ask is, what would this film had looked like if it hadn't been Denzel? Mm-hmm. And I think this is an important point, because if you had reversed it, if you'd made like Denzel the rookie, so to speak, you have a Black rookie and a white, then, or just two white cops, two white narcotics cops, then suddenly the movie loses its meaning, because now you start to read in some of these racial tones. You have a white cop going around checking all these Black drug dealers, people of color. Like, you start reading too much racial animus into it, instead of saying, this isn't about that. This is about the power. This is about cops themselves. It's not about white and Black. And I love that there's even a moment when Jake calls him out, Alonzo. He's like, is that what you're going to be teaching me? He's watching two cops beat up a suspect, and he's like, no, that's Rodney King, shoot first, take names last, whatever, kind of bullshit. He's like, no, dog, that's not what we're doing anymore. That Rodney King stuff is in the past. This is a new game, and I'm going to teach you the new game. And so they're even kind of addressing the racial aspect very subtly by saying, this isn't about that. This movie isn't about that at all. This is about something else. And so you really need to have either Denzel or some other strong, Black actor playing this character in order to remove the racial aspect, so that you can actually talk about what this film is talking about, which is, about power and the power of police and how things go wrong, and the LEO world and how they get turned upside down. And so
initially Samuel L. Jackson was pinged. Yeah. But can you imagine? I mean, like,
there's no wrong way. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm like, well, that probably would have been amazing. He's an incredible actor. Absolutely, it would have been amazing. But how different would it have been?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, because I think that as good as Samuel L. Jackson is, at least lately, like in his kind of like maybe older stuff, maybe not so much, or maybe just, because he's done a lot of the Nick Fury stuff. I just feel like a lot of lines are kind of throwaway in a way. I don't think that he would have done that for this film. I think it would have been incredible. But just to your point, or to your instructor's point or your teacher's point, just Denzel just chews on every single word so well. That's such a great way to put it. I just can't, even Samuel L. Jackson, I just cannot picture anyone else in this role other than Denzel.
Yeah.
And that says, I'm so glad that he won the Oscar for this, because that says so much. You know, if you if you think of a role and someone who played it and you think there's literally anyone else would have changed it so much, that it would have been unrecognizable. Even someone as good as Samuel L. Jackson, then that's a role for the ages, man.
Yeah, 100%. So I'll look at a few things, and we'll see. I don't know what we make up. One of the story and the structure is kind of what draws my attention every time I watch this movie, because like you said, this is just a single day and it feels like months. But it's laid out and structured the same exact way you would want it to be. Which is funny because our first scene is waking up, starting the day. That's normally like death. That's poison to your film, because it's such a old hat way of writing that you just do everything possible to not start with an alarm clock. Like that's ruinous. And if you write that today as an unknown writer, you're going to get wadded up and thrown in before they make it to the second sentence. Like you're over. Yet you have to start that. This is training day, and it's all about kind of charting the rise and fall of one day and everything that rises and falls along with it. And so the structuring your day is really nice as a way to outline your plot. And now the way I write, and I was talking with my producer because he's wanting to help write a story, and he was picking my brain about how do you write, man? Where do you even begin? And for me, it's a lot of collecting ideas, and then I just start bullet pointing like interesting things that I think help build a story and also would be interesting to watch as an audience member. And if it's not one of those two things, I don't usually include it in my outline, because everything else I can write, I fill in the gaps. And so for this, it's like, okay, he's going to wake up and have, breakfast with his wife, right? And we get to meet his beautiful wife and his beautiful newborn baby. He has a lot to live for, and a lot of reason to do well today, right? Don't screw this up. We need that money. We need a nicer house, and we got a baby to feed. And so they're just kind of building up a little bit of the stakes for this character. Like there's a reason he's out here trying to improve his lot in life. He's fighting for something. And then we jump straight to the cafe, right? And cinematography wise, this is where I talk about the horizon line. The general, and it's not hard. Again, everything's contextual. Normally, you can look at a horizon line as a good or a bad thing, which is if a character is beneath the horizon line, another way to say that would be the camera is looking down at them, right? That makes them powerless. And so the horizon is kind of squishing them down. It's killing them. They're underneath the world. They're being buried. All of that kind of terminology fits. Whereas if you're above the horizon line, which is another way of saying the camera is looking up at you, right? You're powerful. You're towering over us. You're on top of the world. All those kind of ideas. And so when we're in the cafe, the scene starts. They're both kind of even. They're both kind of sitting on the horizon line. And so it's pretty neutral. And then some shots, they're both, again, we're looking down at them. And, but as the scene starts to progress, and I love this scene as Hoyt is just struggling to keep his tongue silent. Like he's just so antsy and he wants to make a good impression. And Alonzo's just trying to read the paper. And then as that scene progresses, Hoyt suddenly drops below the horizon line. We're watching him get squished. He's underneath and Alonzo is above. We're shooting up and look at him. He's towering over us. And the power dynamics immediately come into play. Like, okay, Hoyt is not the man. Alonzo is. We feel him powerful. We feel Hoyt powerless. And that I want to say reverses at the end of the film when we get to Alonzo, not just getting killed, but losing the power in the street to Hoyt. I forgot to double check, but I'm pretty sure we start to reverse some of those roles a little bit. But throughout the film, it's a bit of a tug of war, and it's not a hard rule because again, it's all contextual. It's whenever we move into like that first stop when they bust those white college kids, right? Suddenly Hoyt has his power back, and then some of it's just based on this coverage that they're getting in the scene, and so you really have to pay attention to what are the dynamics? What's our location, to see whether or not, the power dynamic is at play or not. Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're just getting a shot from the back seat. And the only way to shoot that is going to be by putting Hoyt in a power position. That's okay. And so the dynamics of the scene matter when you're talking about the horizon line in this movie. But sometimes they do, and you feel it. Sometimes they don't. And that's okay too. And so structurally, going back to that, we go from the cafe to the first stop. And after that first stop, we see a smoke, right? This is where we stop, and we're going to force Hoyt to, take a drag. Then from there, we go to meet Roger. From Roger, we go to stop that rape in the alley. From the alley, we go to a car ride where we start to have this big breakdown. Kind of the thesis of the film, right? To catch a wolf, you have to be a wolf. And that's the whole idea of, this is why Alonzo's doing what he's doing, supposedly, right? It's not self-serving. This is what I have to do in order to make the difference in our community. And I love after he makes his big, grand statement, he says something else. No matter what I say, man, you did the right thing. And what I love about this is when he's saying this, we can't see him. We're behind him. We're shooting. We can almost see an eye, but we really just see the outline of his cheek, the back of his head. And I love that because as he's saying these things, it's reflecting that these days are long gone. This isn't who he is now. That's why we're not looking him in the eye when he's saying this. This is a memory. This is something behind him. It's just beautiful. It's a really beautiful shot and a way to de-emphasize who he is as a character. Instead, make it a memory of him remembering what it's like to be like Jake and to have these principles. And so we move on from this scene to the Snoop bus sequence where they get a name, right? The Sandman. From this, we go straight to getting that fake warrant on Sandman's house, going in there, not finding any money. It's like, damn, or maybe that's actually the money he uses to pay the wise men, I think is the real illusion there. Cause he's like, there was no money. Hey, but in reality, he's using that the three wise men as for money. And then we go, to meet the three wise men, the lunch, right? He gets permission to take down Roger, buys the warrant with the stolen money. And then we go to take Roger down, right? Now, this whole sequence has a bunch of little mini sequences, right? The rooftop prep where we meet the rest of the narc group. The bust in, they dig up the cash, they kill Roger. That's all a lot happening in there. This one bullet point of, for me, that would be in my outline. Okay, now we're going to go take Roger down. And I break that into little minor sequences of the rooftop sequence, the whole raid, the finding the cash, killing Roger, which is great. I love that. I love the casualness of how they murder Roger. And Roger's just sitting there waiting to see how it all plays out because he can't do anything. And the way Alonzo's talking about it, you would think it's we're making a grocery run, right? We're just going to buy beer. It's just like, just squeeze it, get him, boom, boom. Boom itself is a repeated phrase throughout the entire movie. Everyone says it, not just Alonzo, but Roger says it too, right? Yeah. And that little moment too brought something else to my attention. The naming convention is really interesting. There's some kind of religious tone that's being used regarding police, right? You have the three wise men, right? Which is kind of this religious idea. And then you have Mark, Paul, and Jeff, which I think that's kind of the gospel according to Alonzo. That's his what do you call them? The apostles, right? It might've been too easy to call Jeff John. I feel like he was like, I'm being a little on the nose. So I'm going to turn him into something else. And then Alonzo himself, like wearing crosses. He's got like 2 crosses on. And even when he's shot at the end, he kind of holds his arms out like Jesus, right? Alonzo, the name itself means noble, ready for battle. And so there's something going on in the name convention. Jake might be short for like Jacob, maybe the start of a whole new religion. And yeah, I can't quite put my finger on it. I have to watch it maybe 1 or 2 more times to start really parsing where they're going with it, but I think it is kind of the gospel according to Alonzo. And he's this, religious figure that needs to be taken down. He's almost an antichrist that needs to be dealt with in order to let something else rise in its place. And that's what Jake is here for. Jake is here to take him down and make that choice, to say that you don't have to be a wolf to take down a wolf. Sometimes you just have to do what's right, and it doesn't feel good, and that's just what you have to do. It's making a really interesting case for how to, and I think that's the other important part of the racial casting, is that if who you're trying to reach in this film are cops, and what you do is make a white man the enemy, it's going to be harder to hear. The people that you're trying to reach are probably not going to hear it quite as well as you want them to, because they're just going to see, oh, here it is, white people are evil again, but if it's a black man, then it's not about that. Again, we get to focus on the message, which is there's a right way to enforce the law and there's a wrong way to do it. And right now we're doing it maybe the wrong way. And look, this young white man is helping to set things right. I think that makes the medicine a little easier to process. Yeah. And so from taking Roger down, we go to kill Jake, right? This is its own bullet point, right? And then Jake escapes, right? We have the phone call with Letty, which I love. That phone call is so good because we suddenly think, oh my God, we have an out. This is one of the best scenes written in the last 20 years, because you don't think there's any escape for Jake. And they buried his machina so well. His salvation is so well buried in that first act that you just don't see any way for him to get out of this. He's cuffed. He's in a performance level. I can't imagine it gets easier than having a gun in your face. You're physically turned upside down. You're being buried in this bathtub. I believe Ethan is really feeling like he's about to die.
I want to call out my favorite line he says in the entire movie is, "I have a little girl." That always sticks. It's like, other than King Kong Ain't Got Shit on Me, it always sticks with me. It's the first thing. Because they mixed with the image and the way it's delivered, the pause. Because he says, "I have a little girl" earlier. This is the second time he says the line. Like, they're putting him in the bathtub and he says he has a little girl. It doesn't stop him or whatever. But the way that he says it, and they cut to him and it's on his face, "I have a little," it's that pause of the way that he says that is just like, I know this is the last thing I'm going to ever say, and I've got to say it and mean it. And it just got to make him pause just for a second so that they can look closer at the wallet or like, call her or something, call his niece. It's those two lines are what stick with me when I think of this movie, is King Kong Ain't Got Shit on Me and that I have a little girl. It's such, like, you can say that line so many different ways, right? Yeah. And you can mean it every single way, but do you get that across, what you need to get across through the screen? And I mean, it's also the combination of Beryl literally pressing up against his cheek, pushing his head to the side, while he's saying it. It's just fantastic.
It's
fantastic.
So good. And we suddenly, he pulls out the wallet and we're like, oh yeah, the little girl. And he opens it. He's like, "That's your cousin." Suddenly we feel like, oh yes, he's good. He's good. And the phone call, and what I love about the phone call is that she starts lying.
Yes. Oh my God.
What a great way to ramp the tension up, right? We still have to earn the win. Like, they're suddenly pulling this get out of jail free card out, and you're like, okay. And then she's going to tell him, yeah. Oh no. And now suddenly you feel like it's being ripped away from you all over again. And he really has to earn that little win. And it's such a good, the performance is good. The writing is good. Intercutting phone calls like that, is always a challenge to capture two performances separately on separate days. They're not shooting that simulcast. I highly doubt. Maybe, but very unlikely. And they all it's just so good, because suddenly your heart rate shoots right back up. Oh,
And so it's playing with the audience. You're just like up and down and up and down. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
so
I
good.
remember the first time I saw this. And when Alonzo leaves, and he finds out, or we find out that Alonzo leaves because we are Jake.
Mm-hmm.
And we find that out. I was like, what just happened? And then it wasn't until Ethan really realized, or Jake really realized, that I realized. It's amazing. And I don't know if it's just because I'm stupid, or I'm, I am an easy lay when it comes to films, and I just like lay back and take it. But I just didn't realize it until he realized it, and then together, it was. I'll never forget that moment. Honestly, first time watching it. Yeah,
it's one of the most intense experiences in a theater. Like,
yeah,
it's just heart stopping. And structurally, we move right along to from there. Jake suddenly has blood in his eye, right? He goes to stop Alonzo, and at this point, all bets are off. And underneath that, right, there's a lot that's happening, but it's from there. It's just really scene building on an outline perspective. You're just, okay, now Jake is going to go stop Alonzo. And then from there, Alonzo dies. Cool. We have our structure, and everything you need is right there in your outline. And from there, all you need to do is start writing and build out whatever you need for that scene to work. The cafe, what's going to happen? Okay, it's just about them together. Fine. We don't need like a waiter, right? We don't need to bring in a new character for that. In fact, bringing in a new character right there would undercut the scene. Okay, so we're just going to keep it them. Fine. This first stop, we're not going to get to know any of these characters, right? Now we're still just exploring how Jake is surviving in this new world, and we're going to get introduced to how this world works through a stop. Fine. We just have a bunch of white kids on the wrong side of town. We have them having the crap scared out of them. Cool. Now we're going to do a smoke scene. We still don't need anybody. Roger. Okay. Here's our money man. Here's our bag man that we're going to, kill later on. Let's introduce him. Let's like this guy before we find out what he really is. This is just a guy from around the way. We don't know anything about him. He's just a buddy, right? And we come to endear Roger before we find out after he's dead, because you want to kill him. You kind of want to make it hurt. We're still going to make it hurt because we still kind of like Roger. Then it's after the fact that we realize that, Alonzo, the guy we were starting to hate, is revealing everything. Like, oh, this guy was selling drugs to kids and like killing kids and doing whatever. He was ruthless. We're not supposed to feel bad for that guy. Got it. Why do I still feel like crap? It's because you liked him when he died. And that feeling does not go away. And
interesting.
It all feels bad. And so just building out the outline, you're able to start filling in all the missing pieces. How do we get from A to Z? You just fill in one blank at a time and fill out, what is the scene about? How can I make it work for that purpose? And sometimes you need more, sometimes you don't. They didn't introduce all the narcotics group at the cafe. It wasn't like, this is our roll call. This is what we're doing, and I'm calling the plays. No, we'll meet them when it's time to take down Roger. Now we have a whole new batch of wild cards, and it's just beautifully structured in a way that obviously leads one thing to the next. We do the fake warrant because we need the money for the wise men, and we don't know that until the wise men are done. It's like everything you find out is one step too late.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with the intention of Alonzo being one step ahead. And so it's just really, really beautifully structured in order to fit in to Alonzo's day. We're not fitting into Jake's day. We're like Jake. We're always a step behind everything else that's going on. And so I love watching this movie for no other reason, just to get a better understanding of how does the outlining process inform the way the story flows, the way the story works, and how can I apply that to another movie? Just because it works like this in this movie doesn't mean it doesn't work in completely unrelated films. Like you could probably look at whatever Gladiator and still work out some bullet points of, yeah, these are the cool, interesting moments that we're going to experience along the way. I can fill in the gaps to get me from A to B later. But man, this is what makes a really interesting journey. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if this outline probably had like 5 other stops along the way that they were like, probably in the writing phase that says, yeah, we don't need it. We don't need it because it's redundant, or because it takes it maybe makes it too complex for Alonzo. At the end of the day, we still need to feel that he's a corrupt cop. And if at any point you start to feel like he's not completely sold out corrupt, then him dying at the end suddenly doesn't feel justified.
Yeah. And if you keep everything pretty simple and focused, then when it does get a little bit, not complicated, but a little bit more detailed, then it's more impactful.
Yeah.
Like how he dies at the end. They unload on the car. Well, we're not seeing him die. They just unload on the car. And then, so that could have been over. It could have been it. But then he crawls out of the car and he's not dead and he's gasping for air, just like the guy Guilt was gasping for air. Come on, breathe, dog, breathe. And then we see them unload on him for a second time, and then we see him die. It's way drawn out. It could have been very quick.
Yeah.
But no, it was very complex in that moment. But because everything was pretty, this happens, then this, then we learn this, then we learn this, and this person is introduced now. And, then it feels much more impactful. I think you're right.
Final thoughts, man?
Just nothing that I haven't said before. One thing that I would want to add, which you kind of, you were bringing up earlier, is the whole, you were talking at the beginning about, adding more of yourself if you're not feeling, if you're feeling like you don't know where to go, right? Or if you're feeling like something is too much like something else. And I think that is such a great thing to say, but it's hard to do because it's hard to know what's you. Let's be honest. We are incomplete beings and we try new things and we try to discover things about ourselves. We don't know. A lot of times we don't know about ourselves. Even, you or I might know more maybe than somebody else because we've explored that. But I think even now, I can't tell you who I am. I can tell you what I lean towards. I can tell you what I like and what I don't like, but that doesn't necessarily define me. Right. And so I think that this movie is a great example of someone like Denzel Washington or Ethan Hawke or Antoine coming in and saying, I'm going to make this in the way that I want to make it. And when I hit a wall, I'm going to keep going. Right. And just like when I hit a wall with the script or with a scene, I'm just going to keep going and see what happens. Because when you take your brain out of the equation and you just do, all of a sudden that's you, right? When you try to be more you or put in more you really just putting in your influences because you can't really get out of your own head because that's where your influences are. Your influences are there. So if you just turn that off and you just be like how they made this movie, or it feels like they made this movie too, then great things can happen. And whether it's great to the world or not, it doesn't even matter. Great things to you, right? That's the thing. Like we're making art because we want to make it for us. And we want other people to like it. Don't get me wrong. But, if that doesn't happen, you just you go to mile 16, So anyway, I just wanted to further that because I know I try to do that in my work too. And sometimes I get in my own head and I don't know how to be more me, So anyway.
No, I love that. Yeah. At the end of the day, make it reflect you on some level because everyone will assume it's reflecting you anyway.
Yeah, it's true. Oh my gosh. Great point. Yes.
Nice. Dope. What are you going to recommend today?
So today I'm not going to recommend a film. I haven't been able to watch a whole lot this past week that I hadn't seen before. I watched Prisoners and you know how I feel about that movie. It's Hugh Jackman's best performance to me, but I've already recommended that. So what I want to recommend an album. I've been listening a lot to the new Taylor Swift record, Midnights, and it is phenomenal. Midnights and Folklore, her last 2 albums, are just, they're timeless. They're so good. And one of the reasons is, I mean, obviously I think she's genius. I really do. But if for no other reason, genius because of the people she works with. You guys, who she picks. So she worked with Jack Antonoff on both of these albums. And he has taken her or allowed her to go in a different direction.
Who is he?
He was the guitarist for Fun.
Okay.
He plays currently or whatever, guitar in the band Fun. But that was just kind of, the first big thing that he did. But he also has his own solo career and stuff. He lives in New York, and he's just he's fantastic because he's a good example of a movie like this where, you just kind of do things. You don't worry about how good it sounds. You don't worry about anything else but the emotion and getting across a feeling or a sentiment that the artist is trying to make or that you want the listener to hear. He's freaking brilliant at that. And he brings that out of her. He did the Gaslighter, the last Chicks album, did the whole album, and it's brilliant as well. Anyway, so I'm going to recommend Midnights by Taylor Swift. I think it's the first album it's the first time any artist has had all of the top 10 songs at one time from the same record. Not just from the same record, just ever. But at one point, every single song in the top 10 was Taylor Swift's song.
Holy crap.
After this came out. Yeah. It's brilliant. It's really, really good record.
Damn. I am going to recommend, I've been reading this book. It's a dangerous book. So pick it up at your own risk. By Robert Rodriguez. It's called Rebel Without a Crew. And if you haven't read it before, my God, it is a meth, cocaine, adrenaline shot to your heart. Like, if you can read this book and not want to pick up your camera and go make your own movie and, charge Hollywood, like, you just don't have a pulse. It's too late for you. And it's so good. I'm only halfway through it. This, and I just couldn't hold it back anymore. I read the first couple chapters months ago, and I was like, man, I'm getting too gassed up. I got to put this down. True story. And then I finished a few other books, and then last week I picked it back up, and I just kept reading. And my God, it's just so encouraging to read it, and I feel like my story is on the page. Reading it and just seeing what he went through. The first, whatever chapter is like him in a lab to raise money for his film. And that rings a bell. Like, I've spent my time doing research studies, and like even now I'm, as a precaution, selling like plasma just to make sure, this year has been really wildly dry. And, ebbs and flows or what have you. And I'm like, yeah. And then he starts, making this film and just running into every obstacle you could run into. And then he makes the film, and like, no one will buy it. No one will, look at it. And it's just hard getting meetings. And I don't want to like ruin everything if you haven't read the book, but things obviously turned around for Robert Rodriguez.
What? Oh, thanks.
And it's just one of these things where you're laughing. I've cried probably, I don't know, 2-3 times reading this thing. It's just so good to see, like, oh, he's getting a break. What's going to happen? Oh, he's getting another break. Okay. Oh my God, things are going crazy. And it's a diary. Like, it reads like he's logging every single day of this journey. And so it's not like you're hearing him tell the story after the fact. A lot of these entries, if not all of them, are told as it's happening. And he's just like, we can't really afford to eat, 3 meals a day. So right now we're just eating once a day, and we're just figuring it out.
That's amazing.
It's just incredible, because for me, as we were talking about at the beginning of the episode about learning our lesson from French New Wave and Mumblecore, like, you're enough. And if you just go for it, if you really just, go to work and just say what I have around me is enough to make my reality, happen from my dreams. Like it really is like, and I've been struggling over, the last, I don't know, year and a half really since I started writing my feature. I was like, man, I think we can just work with what we have and make something good. It won't be like the $5 million film that we all want to make, but I think we can take, $50,000 and make something real and make it good. And I felt like I was having people kind of call me crazy and like, you don't know what you're doing. This isn't the way you do things. And I was like, okay, am I crazy? I feel like we can do this, but everyone around me keeps doing things a certain way. And people keep, talking to me like there's only kind of one way to do things. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. And a few months ago started saying, you know what, screw it. I'm going to do things my way. I don't care. I just don't care. And then, to pick up this book, my roommate is such a big fan of this book. He hasn't read it all either. He was like, man, I'm telling you, you got to read this book. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to learn from Robert Rodriguez, but fine. Because taste wise, we just have really, really different taste. And I love Desperado and I love Sin City. And I really, enjoyed Alita Battle Angel, and you can go listen to our episode on that. But I was like, beyond that, I don't know that I have a lot of overlap with Rodriguez. And you pick up the book and you realize it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Art is still art, And so reading this book has just been life. It's been absolute life. Yeah, we can do things our way, man, and it's good. And even the last couple of short films I've made, I've reinforced that we know what we're doing. Like, fine, we don't have the nice 100-foot dolly and grip crew to lay it out, and second AC to do the perfect focus pull while we're doing it, but what we have is still enough to be great. Let's just go be great with whatever we have, 10 grand, whatever. Yeah. And so I'm going to recommend that Rebel Without a Crew. I suspect if you're an artist at all, it'll be encouraging. But certainly if you're a filmmaker, you'll Kool-Aid man through every wall in front of you. And so
amazing.
Go do it. Nice. And to that, we also have an artist spotlight that's going to a young Robert Rodriguez. It's a little short film he made called Bedhead. He made this right before El Mariachi. El Mariachi was his $7,000 movie that he went out and made. And so Bedhead he made and sent, and he won like 13, 14 film festivals, and was doing just really, really well. And he was like, man, I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to go make a movie. Screw it. My teachers, whoever classmates think I shouldn't be making this movie. And so I was like, man, what is Bedhead? Let me go watch it. Cause he keeps referencing it in the book. I was like, I'll go watch it. It's adorable. I mean, it's clear, it had no budget, but it's also clear he knew exactly what he was doing. And he was making short films on VCR, basically. Like he was editing this thing on a VCR. That's
crazy.
He didn't have Premiere, he had a tape to tape deck that he was making his edits on, with pennies, and using his siblings, and mom and girlfriend as his cast. Like, just absolutely amazing. Just really
no excuse today.
Zero excuses today.
Yeah.
And so check that out. I'll embed it in the show notes. And what do you think about this one for next week?
I love it.
I was like, Todd's been on a Tarantino kick, and you know what? Maybe it's time to go and do the one. Well, we're gonna go look at Pulp Fiction. So buckle up. Things are gonna get wild.
Love it.
Nice. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget, drop us a review. Leave us a note if there's something you want us to talk about, the kind of things you find interesting. We have a Patreon if you want to jump on that. I just did 3 bonus episodes with a friend of the show, Joe Howes, where we looked at seasons 1, 2, and 3 separately of The Orville. And so if you enjoy that show, that's on the bonus. I might actually release that on YouTube so that you can see the kind of things we're cooking up on Patreon, and also because I just want to support that show. I'm hoping it gets a 4th season. I really want. But just really wonderful conversations. And Heather joins us on the 3rd episode to weigh in on the show. And so if you want to hear some breakdowns of that and more, we have other stuff we're cooking up. You can do that on our Patreon. And if you want to comment on this episode in particular, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/training day.
And today's quote of the day is from Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. That's absolutely the next thing. Just keep doing the next, as Anna says, just do the next right thing. Anna from Frozen. Sorry, I have a little girl.
So good. I mean, I think it's funny because it works both ways. You hear Alonzo describing exactly that.
Yeah.
The way he got corrupted was basically one step at a time. And the way he's advising Jake, if he wants to change things and turn it all around, he's going to have to do it one step at a time too. But also appreciate that sometimes you just have to throw the table upside down and say, okay, well, maybe, but right now, this will not be one step at a time. It's going to be one big step. And you're going to pay the cost. Yeah, I love it. But at the end of the day, yeah, he took care of Alonzo, but he still has to go in and fix an entire police department. And that is not going to happen overnight.
No, definitely not. And I love this quote. I think that it also keeps things in perspective, because if you just focus on the first 15% of something that you're trying to do, you get 85% of the way there. And I think that we get bogged down with the idea of, I got to change an entire police department. Well, hold on. What's the first step you're going to take? That's the only thing that matters, because if you don't do that right, then the second step won't be right. So if you focus on it too far down the road, it not only seems daunting, but you don't even know what you're supposed to do. So I love this quote for that. And I try to, I'm not always the best at it myself, because I try to do a million things, and change the world too. But I try to keep something like that in perspective every day, when I'm making decisions. So great quote there. Great quote.
Love it.
Man, great episode. Love this film. Hopefully you guys had a good time listening to us. If there's anything that you'd like to comment, we'd love to hear from you. If there's a film that you'd like to hear us do or cover, we'd love to hear from you as well. Make sure to subscribe, review us, all those things that Wes said. It all matters, and it's all important to us, and we'd love to hear from you. So until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.